Oh, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You mother, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You fucker, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Open up your hate and let it flow into me. Why can't you just fuck up and die? Get down with the sickness. Fuck you, I don't need this shit. I'm down with the sickness. You stupid sadistic.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bill and Frank Eat Pop Culture. I am Frank, and with me, as always, this is getting to be a habit, is not only Bill, but Johnny Beaver. Bill, John, how you doing? Bill, you go first.
Well, I'm doing okay. I mean, the quarantine has driven me to some crazy lengths. I just gave myself a haircut. I'm not sure how that's going to go for me. But luckily...
Like Jacob Dylan.
Yeah, but luckily, it's very hard to date when you're not allowed to leave the house. So if it's terrible, I can just let it grow back.
Can we recognize how timely my Jacob Dylan reference is?
Yeah, super, super timely.
Yeah. How about you, Johnny? How you holding up?
Goodbye to the XFL again. It feels very familiar, huh?
I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
Did they can it?
Yeah, they canned it.
Postponed operations.
That's a shame because I feel like, I mean, it wasn't doing gangbusters, but I feel like the expectations were much lower this time. I feel like it actually would have been a moderately successful feeder system for the NFL, which is really all they could aspire to be. Maybe it still will. I don't know. Vince doesn't give up on things unless he's absolutely forced to. So who knows?
So the XFL did the job for COVID-19.
The JOB for that Rona.
Damn, the XFL just did the JOB.
That Rona's making a lot of people do the JOB.
That Rona is over.
That Rona is over like gangbusters. That's got some go home heat.
That's X-Pac heat.
No, X-Pac heat would be if there was a virus and nobody got sick.
Or people were getting sick and nobody cared. No, seriously, Johnny, how you holding up, man?
Everything's weird. It was very empty today, and then I realized it was Good Friday combined with being quarantined and sheltered in. So the roads were particularly empty on my way to work, and that was, I guess, nice. And then I took even less time than usual.
You had to go to work?
Nothing can clear a space like the combination of a pandemic and the crucifixion of our Lord.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Why did you have to go to work? Do you work for a bunch of pagans?
I just work for a bunch of people who are aggressively trying to make money in a time when no one's making money, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough.
So Final Fantasy VII came out last night at midnight, and
so we know how you're holding up.
Oh my God, dude! Let me tell you what. I am so happy we're in quarantine.
You're smelly and disgusting.
Oh, dude, I've been in one room of my house all day. I bought a PS4 like 3 or 4 years ago because of this game, and it just kept getting delayed. It finally came out. I pre-ordered it from GameStop, and then I've been freaking out all week because I'm like, how the fuck am I going to get my game? And then I'm like, wait a minute, you idiot. It's 2020. You can just fucking download it.
Stupid idiot.
You stupid idiot. So I downloaded it. They let you download it early because it's so fucking big. It's 80 gigs. Okay.
Jesus,
and that's only
Lost.
Yeah, as you would know because you pirate stuff, but because and that's only the first half of the game, right? So they let you start downloading it early so that at midnight last night you could start. So I was able to get some time in on it today. Oh my God, it is so gorgeous, and it reminds me of, the first time I ever saw Final Fantasy VII, Okem was playing it in
Me too.
What building was that, Bill?
Hill.
Switlick.
No, Hill.
Switlick.
Hill.
No. It was my freshman year.
Oh yeah, you're right, Switlick.
They were in Switlick with Kurto, right?
Yeah, but the first time I saw it was in Diego and Okem's room, but they were in Hill when I was a freshman and you were still in high school.
Oh, okay. So but so because of that, I went home and I bought it, and it just became like one of my favorite games of all time, that and Ocarina of Time. And um, I've been waiting for this remake for like 4 years, and it's so beautiful. It's like a completely different game, same story pretty much, but it's much more in depth. The battle mechanic is real time instead of like that classic Final Fantasy turn based battle mechanic. Um, and the graphics are just breathtaking. I mean, it is insane, and the voice acting is very good. So like I've got like the next couple weeks of my life planned, and it couldn't have happened in a more perfect time. So I've actually been wishing that this quarantine would prolong enough to overlap with the release of this game. So, um, but yeah, so that's what I've been doing once work was over for the rest of the day. But how about you guys? Anything new or just same old, same old? I, I'm gonna ask you a question, then cut you off before you can answer.
Great. You're good at that.
Yeah, I finally finished The Witcher.
Oh, about time.
What'd you think?
Yeah, I really liked it. Henry Cavill is. It makes me even more mad that the DC universe sputtered because, or the DC extended universe, because he's awesome.
I agree.
And I really liked it. It's completely its own thing. I can't even compare it. I know on past shows I've compared it. I've like tried to make a stupid comparison, but it's so different and so its own thing. I love Jaskier, or however you say his name, the bard. Yennefer is such a cool character. Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I can't wait for the next season because, I mean, Bill and Johnny, you've both read the books or no?
I have read the first book, which is just the collection of all the stories that they adapted for season 1. I have the second one, but I have not started it yet.
Okay, so the first book is what they adapted for season 1.
The first two
books.
books.
John, correct me if I'm wrong, but they may have taken stories from the first 2 books for season 1.
Yeah, it's the first 2 books. So I read the second book too, and it's not quite as segmented into multiple short stories the way the first one is, which is why the later part of the season, I think it becomes a little less anthology and a little more kind of overarching story, because the second book is a little more overarching story. But even then, a lot of the stuff with the princess is not really as heavily in. So they even pulled some stuff, I think, from future books that I haven't read, just to kind of introduce that through line.
Yeah, from what I gather, at least from what I've read, once you get to book 3, from that point on, it behaves like a normal fantasy series where it's one overarching story told in novel form.
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that show did great numbers for Netflix, and Cavill seems pretty enthusiastic about it. So I think Netflix will give it at least another season or 2.
Well, yeah, I mean, at the end of the last season, they're like, it's official. They put a thing up on the screen. It's like, it's official. Another season is coming.
Yeah, 2. They definitely greenlit 2. I feel like they'll at least get to 3, and we'll see what happens. Netflix can be weird. Sometimes they have a quick hook, so we'll see.
So I'm interested to pick your guys' brains about this, because you guys are usually good on this stuff. So The Witcher it's something that I'd say until this show came out, it was probably like a cult thing because of the video game. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Until they started making the show, I didn't even know that there were books. I thought it was just a video game. Do you guys feel? And I love and respect the fact that they actually made something that's loyal to the way the books are written and structured, but pretty ambitious to make a show that you're introducing a new world and character to, that's not super linear and really easy to follow. Like, I feel like this show it's a tough barrier to entry.
Yeah, and
that casual like watcher.
That was the criticism. I mean, the people were saying it's confusing, but I mean, to me, like, and this is what we talk about when we do Lost. It's like, kudos to the creators that are like, okay, figure it out. Like, you're smart people, most of you. You can follow it. Just give it a chance. Like, I like that. I feel like everything gets so dumbed down for audiences now. I like when people don't dumb it down.
Are most people smart? Johnny, answer that question.
What is the Men in Black quote? The individual person is smart, but people are dumb and panicky. Is that what is that what Tommy Lee Jones says?
Still, I like that. I like that they give the benefit of the doubt, and it's like a very faithful adaptation. Like, it's not like, yes, it jumps around and it's not linear, but it's not the usual suspects. It's not that hard to follow once you get into it, I feel like.
And I also don't think the books are particularly, especially the first book is not really do a ton of world building. There's no maps. All the maps are basically fan created maps that have then like subsequently been approved by the author, and he doesn't spend a ton of time explaining how the magic works. And a lot of Geralt's backstory is really kind of it unfolds slowly over time. So in that way, it's the way the books are as well. And I think the other thing is, the first book in particular, a lot of it is based on Polish mythology. So I guess if he thought he was writing for a Polish audience only, and people were more familiar with the tropes of that. Although you can actually see some of those myths are very similar to more widely known myths. But the fact that
but who isn't familiar, at least casually, to Polish mythology?
No, I mean it's clearly something that everyone is steeped in. It's just as well known as Odin or Jupiter. Absolutely.
Well, and that's the books came out a while ago. Like, it's taken some time to get to America. Like, these.
Well, but what got it to America is the video game.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, this guy, I think John's point is well taken. Like, this guy was clearly writing for his own country's audience. Like, and it took a video game and everything else to broaden it. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that it's confusing for us.
And I have no familiarity with the video game. I know it has very devoted fans. I believe Henry Cavill is actually a fan. I know he's a gamer, and I think he's actually a big fan of the video game, which is part of the reason why I wanted to be involved. So maybe it also hews very closely to the storyline of the video games, and there's a pre-built audience for that. The gaming culture is one I'm not really into, but it's obviously as or more devoted as the comic book culture, as far as being really into this stuff and really looking
Frank, when do you think The Last Wish came out? The first book is called The Last Wish. When do you think that came out?
I feel like I'm being set up here.
Well, it's surprising. Like, this has become a phenomenon in America in late 2019. The book was published in 1993.
I would have said like the mid-aughts.
That's quite some time. Like, that's,
that is.
I mean, this guy probably never thought that this was going to happen. So,
well, it's all the video game. I mean, like the Witcher 3 video game, which I've never played, but a lot of people say it's one of the greatest games ever made.
I don't even know what system it's on.
I think that one's on all of the systems.
Yeah. Okay.
Could you imagine if all gamers looked like Henry Cavill?
What if they do?
I'm having a hard time picturing Henry Cavill like sitting on a couch with a video game, remote
and like a headset, trash talking people.
He definitely he's either when he plays video games, he's either naked or in a Superman costume.
I'm imagining the commercial from like years ago with Peyton Manning talking into the headset. Your defense is offensive.
So we're watching it, and in the last episode, spoilers, he gets bit by one of those fucking zombie things that come out of the ground, and Mary's like, oh my God, he's gonna die. And I turn to her with disgust and like embarrassment in my like face, and I'm like, he's the fucking star of the show, he's not gonna die. And she goes, well, just like Sean Bean. And I was like, damn. But what it made me think of, there was never a second where I thought Henry Cavill was going to die, but it's like, think about, and yes, it was in the book first, absolutely, but think about how crazy that is. That's what that's the kind of shit that made Game of Thrones so fucking good and crazy. Was like the whole season, Sean Bean was the only actor that anybody knew who they were in that show, and he was the star of the entire first season. The main plot was based around him, and they killed him off in the first season. Like, that shit doesn't happen often. Like, what a risk. Yeah, the people who read the books knew it was coming.
Yeah.
But the people who read the books are not the ones that made that show the runaway success that it was. You know what I mean?
But I took particular delight in waiting for it and watching it with other people. That was fun. Like, I was like waiting with
I feel like if you were
watching my dad watch it, like, boy, he has no idea what's coming. Same thing with the Red Wedding. I couldn't wait for it.
Your dad didn't read Song of Ice and Fire?
No, he did not.
Oh my God,
dad,
I just lost major respect for the judge.
He's old. He doesn't read that much anymore. He watches TV now. Like, even in a pandemic where he's got nowhere to go, my mom is like, read one of the books that you have not read, and he just refuses to do it. He's old and crotchety.
Because, see, that's funny, because when we had the Bill and Frankie Pop Culture Summit at Sea, he was going on and on about reading one of the Tolkien books that nobody gives a fuck about. And he was telling me about like the birth of like the elves and all these, and I was trying to act like I cared.
Yeah, well, he read that. That's probably the Silmarillion. He read that a while ago.
Yeah, he was reading Unfinished Tales or something. Like, it was like
he was reading something new, right, Johnny?
It was something like one of those ones I think that the Sun had sort of finished and put out. It was like a multi-volume sort of history of Middle Earth thing, like similar to the Silmarillion, but I think even more in depth. That really nobody reads.
Yeah, my brother got him the Ice and Fire books a while ago. He has them. He just hasn't read them.
Maybe he just doesn't want to not have an unfinished series that he might not finish. You know.
Well, has he watched Picard?
Yes, he keeps bugging me to finish it.
So I'm going. Well, you only have like 2 episodes left.
Yeah.
Beaver, have you watched it?
I have finished. Yes.
So that's the next thing I'm going to binge. I'm actually, as soon as we finish this show, I'm going to eat dinner with Mary, and we're going to crush through Picard. And Bill, I just want to put this out there. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
The only reason I'm doing this, the only reason I'm going to watch Picard, is because if I watch Picard, I want to have Jack Klett on the show and discuss Picard.
That would be awesome. He's about as Star Trek knowledgeable as anybody I've ever met. Honestly, outside of my dad.
So, Jack, I know you listen, and I love you, and Bill and I both love you very much, and we both think the world of you. And...
Easy.
But yeah, so I was trying to think, like, how can we get Jack on the show? Because Jack's a pretty dynamic guy, right, Bill?
Yep.
And I'm like, we got to do something Star Trek. So I'm going to watch Picard, and then we can all talk Picard, and I think Jack will be in his element.
It's it's a really good show.
I mean, this is a guy who, for his talent for the Homecoming King competition in college, did the speech from Independence Day.
That's true.
All right. You guys ready to get the show started?
Yep.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Well, then let's start the show.
If you're into all things comics, you have to check out Take a Knee for Marvel vs. DC, your go-to podcast for comic and superhero discussion, debates, polls, and more. Tune in as Regular Scott and Ozzy Killmonger chat about your favorite comic topics, and you never know who may show up for an open mic, or what will be next on their favorite One Gotta Go. Take a Knee for Marvel vs. DC, every Sunday, powered by the Defy Light Podcast Network.
Okay, so Disney has been in the news. Sorry, I had this damn beeping thing in my background. I'm going to start again.
What is that?
It's the Verizon box that has some battery issue, and I haven't been able to fix
Oh
it
my God,
now.
I'd
And
kill
now
myself.
I'm moving out, so I'm just like, whatever. I don't give a fuck. But it's getting more frequent, so my apologies. I know it's annoying. I try to cover the mic when I'm not talking to have it go out, but sometimes I forget because I'm smoking my pipe. All right, let me start this again.
You got
So Disney has been in the news a lot recently. I think they've been particularly struggling with the issues with everything going on in the world right now and the repercussions of COVID-19 shutting down the U.S. economy. I've been dying to talk about this for the last couple episodes I've been on, but we just have so many good conversations we haven't gotten to it yet. And in the meantime, more and more information is stacking up, and none of it, frankly, has been very positive for Disney. So I do want to preface this by saying there are some things that are not a company's fault. Closing theme parks for safety is not Disney's fault.
Sure.
Spending $72 billion in a pissing contest with Comcast in order to buy Fox is Disney's fault, and that's why they have no cash on hand, and that's why they're having to borrow so much money. So the same way we talked about Diamond, we're going to see a lot of similarities with Diamond and Disney and some of the other stuff we're going to talk about today. So I can run through some of the major events that have happened, or do you guys want to kind of jump in and with your initial thoughts?
Well, I mean, I would say first, like, and I know everything I say, Bill's going to jump all over me and say, well, you're just defending Disney. But I would say, nobody can predict the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody could ever predict that something like this was right around the corner. And, the Disney parks are, well, Walt Disney World at least is a fucking cash cow and has been able to keep the company as vital as it has been for the last however many years, despite of how shitty all the other parks have done, and some of the other questionable business decisions they've made. But I mean, I think boxing Comcast out for Fox was a smart decision. Of course, hindsight being 2020, now in the situation we're in, you look back and you go, well, what, that's why you're having all the problems you're having, because you had to swing your dick around. But I mean, that Fox library and that's, I think if they would have let Comcast have that, I mean, in that marketplace, that's a huge loss.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword. I think being cash poor right now is not great, and if they had not spent all that money, billions on Fox, they'd have a little bit more money right now. At the same time, every comic book fan in the world wanted all of Marvel's properties to be under one umbrella. So that happened. And two, arguably their biggest asset right now is Disney Plus. I mean, it's not even arguable. It is their biggest asset right now. Like, theme parks are their number one generator of money. They're closed. Movies are closed. So it's Disney Plus. Like, they've already pivoted to, they put Frozen 2 out there really quickly. They put Onward on Disney Plus almost right away. Artemis Fowl is now a major blockbuster that was supposed to be released in the middle of the summer movie season, is going to go right to Disney Plus, which is a huge move.
Do you think it would have been a major blockbuster, though?
Well, I mean, it was positioned for a May release. So, I mean, if they thought it was going to be Shitsville, then they would have dumped it in August or even later. But usually, Memorial Day weekend is a big weekend.
Shitsville.
It's Memorial Day weekend is a big weekend. And you can make the argument that the Disney Plus platform is more attractive with the Fox library on it. So, I mean, in a way, they're kind of lucky they have all that content now that people are home. And Disney Plus has already passed 50 million subscribers, which is just ludicrous.
So let me just ask you this, and we're kind of I'm glad it's a free flowing conversation because this was the talking about Disney Plus was actually the last thing on my list, but I'm happy to jump into it first.
Well,
Do
we can
your
go.
kids watch?
If you want to,
No, I'm not.
if you want to give a rundown of like what's happened, that would be fine too.
No, I'm happy because my question is this: do your kids? Because I don't have kids. Do your kids watch a lot of Disney Plus, and do you guys watch a lot of Disney Plus?
I'll go for my kid watches exclusively Disney Plus. She either watches YouTube on her phone or her iPad, or she watches Disney Plus. She's either watching movies like Frozen or Onward. We watched Onward this past week, or she loves going back and watching the Disney Channel original series. Like I'm talking Lizzie McGuire and Hannah Montana and all that stuff. And she has like literally got, 80 seasons of TV to go through between all those things. So it's really been.
It's weird that she watches all the shows I used to jerk off to.
That is kind of weird.
And it
Right
just
now
got really uncomfortable.
Right now she's watching Good Luck Charlie, I think. So I mean, it really has. I've loved having it. It's kept her occupied. There's not as much for that she's into on like Netflix or Hulu. So I mean, yeah, and I, I go on there primarily for if I want to watch a Marvel movie or I want to watch a Star Wars thing, and I watch the Clone Wars. So I'm on there quite a bit.
Frank, how
My
about
kids,
you?
yeah, my kids don't. Well, I'm sorry. My 12-year-old twins do not. I mean, they watch it, but I wouldn't say they watch it a lot. They are heavily in their times heavily vested in various YouTube streamers. Liam and I watched Mandalorian together. Isabel and I watched The Imagineering Story together. Now, Francesca watches it a lot because of the movies, and she likes the Forky Ask a Question show. She watches those over and over and over and over and over again. But yeah, I mean, I'd be watching it more personally if, I mean, I still don't understand why they put it out and only had one original series in the can.
That was where I was going. I think it's been a disastrous rollout that's only been exacerbated by COVID-19 because you look at what, the HBO Max app is going to have and even what Apple TV had. And I think Apple TV has been kind of a disaster too, but at least they had a lot of new content that was buzzy and got out there. Disney had Mando and nothing else. And
nothing.
They had nothing in the can that was
and
new.
Nothing coming for months.
Yeah. And now it just, we sang the praises of it a couple months ago. So I don't want to sound like I'm some sort of guru because I was saying this thing's great. But, and obviously I loved Mando. But, I think to have had nothing really ready for the adult audience or even, the geek audience or any of that besides Mando, in hindsight, it just really looks like they rushed the app out and they weren't really ready and they should have waited. I'm sure they're glad they have it right now in any form just because no one's doing anything else. But, I don't spend that much time watching it as an adult, honestly. That's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I mean, I'll play the role of Frank today. Like, I think you're both nuts. Yeah, they had the one. Well,
hold on. What the fuck does that mean?
I'll defend Disney. Like, first of all, I just said I'm watching new episodes of the Clone Wars, so that strikes me as a new show. I mean, maybe I'm crazy.
What is?
Maybe I'm crazy. But when you're unveiling a platform that has, I think when they rolled out, it was 17 of the 22 Marvel movies. Now it's up to 19 or 20. All the Star Wars stuff, all of Fox's library. Like, you have the benefit of not needing 10 original shows. If there's been a disastrous rollout, it's been Apple because they had 3 original shows and nothing else on there. So people subscribe for a week, watch the show they want to watch, then cancel. People aren't doing that with Disney Plus. There are 50 million subscribers. For comparison's sake, I worked at the WWE Network when it launched, and to this day, I don't think it's ever gotten over 2 million. And it's been around for a lot longer. For them to be over 50 million by now, that thing is an unqualified success. Maybe it would have more, maybe it would have even more if there was a couple more adult original programs, but I don't think there's a lot of people complaining.
But I mean, I don't pay for it, and basically no Verizon customers pay for it. So how many of those 50 million subscribers are going to be gone come November when that 1 year freebie rolls up, right? And then that 50 million is also because they just passed that mark, not because they're just gaining subscribers in the US, but because they just opened up in a bunch of international markets. So it's still good they have it, don't get me wrong, but I just don't see it being very buzzy, I guess. You want to have a Stranger Things, you want to have, and they had that with Mando, and then it's just been months of silence. Like, I agree, Clone Wars is something that people watch. I wouldn't call it a buzzy kind of show that's getting a lot of press, though. And that's obviously coming from an adult perspective. But I still think they
I don't
could
know.
have
I think
had
it's,
more in the can.
I don't know. I don't know what, yeah, like people's freebies are going to be coming up in the fall, but there'll be a promotion when that, just like every other over the top network. Also, by the time people's subscriptions are going to run out, you're going to get one of the Marvel Disney Plus series, which come out in the fall. And then
Right. So that's what I was going to ask. So when's the next live action?
September.
Right. So
There's one in
what is
September.
that? Falcon
There's
and what is it?
There's one in September, one in December, and one next February.
Right.
Plus,
So
plus the Mandalorian season 2. I don't think there's going to be that much of a drop off. Call me crazy.
But those are
I mean,
all had to halt production too, though, so they may not be on the schedule that they're on. And
No,
that, of
I
course,
mean,
is not their
Falcon
fault.
Winter
But
Soldier, I think, is in the can, or at least most of it is in the can. And not every production in the world is shut down. I think by the time summer hits, there'll be a way for people to test everybody in a production crew and make sure everybody doesn't have the virus and then resume shooting. Mission Impossible is still shooting. They have not stopped. Because
stupid question. Is there a chance Disney's holding off their next live action series until the free trial on Verizon ends?
yeah, I mean that's a strategy of every over the top network. When they know subscription erosion is going to happen, they time it so people are like, "Well, I don't want to miss this." So you're going to get a Marvel series and you're going to get the Mandalorian season 2. I don't know what the Star Wars, I don't know whether their production is shut down or what's happening with that. But the way it was planned is when when subscriptions were going to erode, that's when they would come with their heavy hitters.
so, I mean, I think we're probably arguing in a circle here about whether it's been a success or not. But, Frank, you alluded to the fact that the theme parks, and in particular Walt Disney World, are actually the backbone of the company. And people don't always realize that because, there's a lot of talk about, yeah, sure, I'll have another beer, Frank. Thanks.
Oh shit! Sorry, wrong text chain.
But the theme parks bring in something like $30 billion a year, and you get a lot of buzz about Avengers Endgame making $2 billion, but the reality is that is really their diversification. The same way that AT&T owns Warner Brothers, so they're diversified in that they're a telecom. The same with Comcast and Universal, and then Sony is an electronics company that also owns Sony Columbia Pictures. So Disney was particularly hard hit here because their diversification, every aspect of it got hit at exactly the same time by this virus. Right. And that's really what's exacerbated for them above the other companies. I mean, AT&T is up to their ears in debt as well, but people still need phone service. They still need cable and they still need internet. But they can't go to theme parks. They can't go to sporting events. So ESPN, which is owned by Disney, has no live sports to show. Right. They can't go to comic book stores, which is a drop in the bucket as far as their overall revenue. But so Marvel has nothing to sell. So really, they just got hit from every angle with this in a way that the other conglomerate media companies didn't, which is really put them in a much more difficult position than the other major studios are in, or the other major studios.
I mean, except for ABC, which, let's face it, I mean, network television doesn't make any money anymore.
No, I mean, and they didn't get Fox News with the acquisition of Fox. That's still separate with the Fox television network. So they're not even having all these eyeballs on, news, watching Trump stuff.
I will add, though, that ESPN is actually not doing bad. Like, there are not any live sports, but there's not anything. So people are watching ESPN right now. And they're going to watch the NFL draft because it's still happening in mid-April, and they moved up the Last Dance to April 19th from the fall, which is a 10-part documentary series on Jordan's Bulls. I mean, they're making moves. People are stuck inside, and even if it's not, about sports that are happening live, people are still putting ESPN on in the background of their houses.
So let me just put this out to you guys, because there was a rumor going around, and this was actually before the shit hit the fan, that Apple might acquire Disney. Do you think that is now more likely, given what's been going on here, in order to diversify the company? Because Apple is cash rich.
Yeah, from a strict, if you look at it from a strict financial business perspective, yes. Apple has been hoarding cash for years and everybody's been saying, like, what are they hoarding this cash for? What are they hoarding this cash for? Like, they're going to make some big fucking, some big acquisition. And they've always kind of had this weird relationship with Disney since the Pixar days. And now with Iger stepping down, it definitely, if you look at it from a financial business perspective, yes. The answer is yes. It absolutely is a higher percentage chance. I don't see it happening, though, because the Disney board of directors still seems to be very... I mean, Comcast tried to make this move, I forget how many years ago, and Disney did everything they could to fight them off. The Disney board of directors still seems very, very loyal to the legacy of the Walt Disney Company.
Do you think that's still the case? Because I think what you're talking about is when they ousted Eisner, right? Way back in like the early 2000s or something.
Well, I think they ousted Eisner. This is a whole nother podcast, and now you're getting into Frank's world. But they ousted Eisner for a number of reasons, and after Eisner, the combination of, I forget the guy's name, Frank something dying, his COO, and Eisner having his heart attack. After that, Eisner was never the same. He was just never the same businessman. He relied on a lot of other people to make decisions and took the business in a completely different direction. And he should have been ousted. And I'm a huge Eisner fan. But I just, I don't see Disney being bought out by an outside company yet. Will it happen in the future at some point? I don't know. I mean, usually Disney's been the predator. I don't know. It's hard for me to ever see that happening. I try to look at it objectively, but I just can't. I mean, that's an emotional question for me.
I don't think Apple is going to pay what Disney would cost. I mean, Apple doesn't need Disney.
Yeah, that's the other point. Yep.
I mean, it's going to cost them upwards of $300 billion to buy Disney. And it's not a smooth fit into Apple's ecosystem. I think it's more, I don't think they'll get as much bang for their buck as if they would spend their money elsewhere on smaller things.
Yeah, but I mean, it is almost a distressed asset at this point. It's not quite there yet, but they're never going to get a better price than they're going to get in the next 6 months. Honestly.
Yeah, but Disney is struggling. Disney is struggling not because their intellectual property has valuation issues, right? Disney is struggling because they're cash poor right now. They still are in a situation where the intellectual property and the intangible assets that they own are probably more valuable than any other company's set of intangible assets in the world. And that's what you buy when you buy a company, right?
And
so
Disney's distressed, but they're not distressed where they're not on the clearance rack. They're still
they're not gonna roll over and show their belly.
They're still gonna charge them. Like at their peak, they were valuated at $335 billion. They're not at their peak anymore, but they're still going to ask for more than that. and I don't think Apple's going to pay it.
I mean, their stock price is still $104 a share.
But it was $160 a share. So we're looking at, a third of the value is gone.
Yes, very true. But it's not like their stock is, $30 a share.
Right. And this is, it's not going away as quick as people would want it to go away, but this virus is temporary. Like,
it's temporary, but the social distancing, and I think the people coming back and crowding into theme parks or crowding into movie theaters is a lot further off than the end of the social distancing itself. Which
right,
is,
but then,
it's not like
then Apple buys Disney and faces the same problem. Like, why would you spend $300 billion if you're going to have a bunch of theme parks that nobody can go to, or a bunch of Marvel releases that can't come out yet? I just don't see it happening anytime soon.
So, Johnny, are you saying you think it's going to happen?
What I'm saying is that I think if there was any credence to the rumor a couple months ago, and there was even a thought that was actually going through Tim Cook's head, it's got to be a lot higher up on that, than it was previously. And I think they could get a fairly good price right now. And I'm not sure that Disney is quite as beholden to the old Walt Disney family model as it used to be. I think a lot of those guys are gone. I think that ousting Eisner was kind of the last gasp of those kind of old guard Disney people. And I'm not sure. And I think that they have to be looking at themselves as a company and saying, we thought we were diversified, but we weren't. And we don't have the cash to acquire something to get us more diversified.
Yeah, but they are diversified. And the only reason they don't have the cash is because they just made a major acquisition. And like I said, it's not like they said, okay, we've got this pandemic coming in 4 months, and but we're still going to buy Fox. Buying Fox was the right choice, was the right decision at the time. I mean, it's not a business that's poorly managed and poorly run. However, I will say that Bob Iger stepping down at the time that he did is telling, and I would really like to know what else is behind that decision. But I just don't. I'm with Bill. It's like, yeah, anybody buys this company. What do they get out of it?
Right.
I mean,
not only
what do they get out of it?
Not only that, but I was reading an article about this maybe two or 3 days ago, that Apple has sort of they've gotten to the position they're in by not playing favorites. Like, Apple, their success with platforms from iTunes and the App Store and all that stuff is because they don't play favorites among content like creators. So, but if they spend $330 billion on Disney, that's going to change. I mean, it's going to fundamentally change Apple.
Yeah. So it's like, that's the other thing. Like, if I'm the board of directors at Apple, right, and Cook comes to me and says, I want to take all this cash we have in this super unstable, unpredictable time that we live in and buy Disney, I'm going to say, how does that fit our portfolio as a company? You're basically saying you want to expend all of our cash in this time where, people can't afford to buy devices anymore, and put it on a company and spend it on a company that puts us in a completely different space than we're comfortable in, than we know how to run, than we're comfortable in. Like, it's not like him going out and saying, well, we're going to buy WeWay, or however the fuck you say it, or we're going to buy Samsung, or we're going to buy LG. We're going to go buy a fucking the biggest multimedia organization in the world. I mean, that's a huge. I mean, so at that point, does Apple become Disney, or does Disney become Apple?
Right.
No, I think you're right. I think that both companies would lose a lot of their individual identity, but I think that maybe part of the reason Disney's struggling too, to some extent, is they're too beholden to that identity. And Apple's always been there. We're also talking about two companies that are maybe the most strongly identified with a very specific brand of any in the world. But I think that I didn't understand when Disney Plus launched why Hulu wasn't folded in. I still don't understand why it's not folded in. Why there isn't just a kids version and an adult version, and you just put all the Fox stuff on there, and I can watch Predator, and then the kid I don't have, my niece and nephew, whatever, can also watch Hannah Montana. I never understood that. I don't understand it now, but that's Disney being Disney, right? And Apple's certainly not above vanity projects. I think they paid for that entire show just so they could put giant posters of Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon in their Apple stores. But they clearly are interested in this, and they put their toe in the water with Apple TV, and it hasn't gone well. There might be interest there. And everybody might be looking around and saying,
Apple TV's not going well when I can get it on Roku.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying that I think, everybody that made fun of Jack Welch and then GE kind of became a catastrophe is now be looking and saying, well, maybe getting into banking and all those things that weren't GE, maybe as a company, we have to be more diversified than we are. And we can't just be this one thing and this one thing only, because who knows what the next thing is going to be that's going to hit the telecoms and it's going to hit the right, that, and then Disney will be fine, but Apple will be screwed, right? That's I'd much rather be Comcast right now, let's put it that way, and have both Universal going, or Universal not going, but Comcast is going fine.
But that's also another problem. If Apple buys Disney, like, people already are pissed off that Disney's banner is over enough things. If Apple buys it, it's even less options. And you could argue the product would be even less diverse than it is now.
Nothing makes me angrier than the fact that people are angry that Disney's banner is over shit.
Right, but I mean, but it may make you angry, but it happens.
Yeah, but how many companies in the history of the world have existed, evolved, succeeded, and been consistently successful than the Walt Disney Company?
Well, I think you're talking about two different things. You're talking about either socialists and communists that don't want companies to make money on one hand, and then you're talking about people that just don't like Disney Star Wars, right? So there's two kind of branches of that, and I don't think they're really coming from the same place when they get angry at Disney for being overlords or something.
Yeah, but people don't like Disney Star Wars, but they didn't like the prequels either.
That's certainly true. It wasn't like Lucas was shepherding it very well. I don't disagree with that.
Exactly. So it's, I mean, I don't know. I get prickly about that. And, I remember when Disney first bought Marvel, Bill, my co-host, sent me a text about how he was not happy about it. Because Bill is a Disney hater. Much like he accuses me all the time of being a WWE hater. But, I mean, it's like, who would you rather have helming these IP? I mean, who can bring more, legitimacy to these brands than Disney? They're one of the most successful, if not the most successful, media company in the history of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Disney hater, but you can make the argument that the Marvel banner coming under Disney is a threat to homogenize Marvel's output. It can make everything a little less daring, a little more family friendly. Like, people are still worried about it with Deadpool, and they have every right to be.
What's your favorite movie of all time?
My favorite movie of all time?
Yeah.
Endgame.
Mine's The Empire Strikes Back, so that's pre-Disney Star Wars. But
I feel like you think you just scored a point, but you didn't. You did.
I put it in the 3-hole, baby.
Okay.
Is that the end? Is that the end of the segment?
Yeah.
That was a good end of the segment. You got to admit, Bill.
Okay.
All right, what's next? Ezra Miller. Let's talk about the movie theaters. I think we should talk about that this week.
Okay.
Bill, you want to go into this one or no?
Oh, he's mad. Why are you mad?
Fuck off.
Are you serious?
Dude, you just swung a wrecking ball at me, then ended the segment. Like, fuck off.
All right, well, let's not end this segment. Let's keep going.
That's okay. Yes, my favorite movie. I said what it is, and then the segment's over. That's fine.
No, I want you to rebuttal. I don't want you to feel like you got cheated.
All right, fine. I mean, okay, so you're
Just
telling
edit all this.
I'll edit all that. It's fine. You're telling me that if Disney hadn't taken over Marvel, we would have gotten Edgar Wright's Ant-Man. We would have had Lord and Taylor's Solo instead of Ron Howard coming in. We would have had Colin Trevorrow on episode 9 instead of the abortion that we got, because Disney has iron-fisted control over everything they do. If you go a little far outside the parameters they want you to go out, you get fired. Like the creative.
I thought Edgar Wright walked away.
Yeah, because Disney wouldn't let him make the movie he wanted to make. Now,
Okay.
and this is Disney not learning its lesson, because the few times they've let a creative director do his own thing without interfering, like, I don't know, James Gunn or the Russo brothers, it's been great, but they can't get out of their own way. And we just, Scott Derrickson made a pretty good Doctor Strange. He had to tone it down because of Disney. And what happened? He walked away from Doctor Strange 2 because Disney wouldn't let him make what he wanted to make. They hire these people that are super creative. And then when they get creative, Disney says, I don't know, the Mouse House doesn't like that.
So do you consider Kevin Feige Disney?
No. I mean, he's an employee of Disney, but I don't I think he fights the good fight and gets as much creative control for the directors he hires as he can. But, I think Ant-Man was a great movie, but Peyton Reed is a assembly line director.
Right. Yeah.
That's Edgar Wright, it's a much better movie.
Would have been a completely different thing.
I think by the time the Russo brothers got to Infinity War and Endgame, they had so much goodwill with fans and stuff like that. Disney really didn't have much of a choice. But even more so with Star Wars, like, since Disney's taken over Star Wars, it's been an unmitigated disaster. The one time they didn't bother the director was The Mandalorian.
But was it not a disaster before they took it over?
I mean, the prequels certainly weren't great, but yeah, and Lucas needed to step back, but I don't think they've handled it well.
I think there's a couple things going on there, though, right? Because, Kathleen Kennedy is incompetent, and she's proven her incompetence, and they never should have put her in charge, and that's Disney's fault. Kevin Feige isn't. Joss Whedon clearly did not get along with Kevin Feige on Avengers: Age of Ultron. That wasn't totally Disney. That was clearly Kevin Feige too. So I'm not sure it's 100% on Disney XX, like top level. I think Kevin Feige is somewhat to blame there for some of the homogenization of Marvel. And that's certainly what Marvel's been accused of in the most negative, and every negative critical thing is that they all look the same. The action scenes are all shot the same. The tone is the same. Everything has the same quips. It's all Jon Favreau and Joss Whedon dialogue. That's kind of what everybody blasts Disney for. But hey, they let Coogler do Black Panther. They let the Russo brothers make the Winter Soldier. So I think because they kind of let Kevin Feige do his thing and they trust him, and sadly they've also let Kathleen Kennedy do her thing and trust her, and that's been an unmitigated disaster because she doesn't know what the hell she's doing.
But for whatever reason, they didn't trust Joss Whedon.
I don't think it's. I think it's. Yes, some of the blame for the homogenization goes on Feige, but I think it's not all on him. I think Disney has a reputation for acquiring things and molding them to fit their ecosystem, and that's happened here. I think it would have been a very interesting thing if Marvel had been bought by Apple, because Apple has a reputation for letting innovative people come in and innovate.
So what does that mean?
That means that I'm not a Disney hater or a Disney lover. I can defend Disney when it comes to the whole COVID situation, because I think they're making the best of a terrible situation. And I don't think they should sell out to Apple. And I think Disney Plus is awesome. It's by far my favorite streaming network, over the top platform, whatever you want to call it. At the same time, I'm not sure it was the best place for Marvel or Star Wars. But it's what we have. Like, I agree with you,
You're
Frank.
saying you don't think Disney was the best place for those?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, they'd be able to just be their own independent things, but that doesn't really happen anymore. So
Yeah, I think in any situation though, when an independent thing is taken over by a larger body, it loses some of its identity. Absolutely.
no, I agree with that. I mean, and Marvel's a little. I think it's a little grayer. It's a little murkier, like what John was saying. Part of it's on Feige. Part of it's on some of these directors that come in and don't want to play ball and don't want to Edgar Wright had no interest in connecting Ant-Man to the larger universe, and that's on him. But part of it is Disney, and with Star Wars, definitely part of it is Disney. Like, besides the fact that they put Kathleen Kennedy in charge and have now kept her in charge through this unmitigated clusterfuck of a sequel trilogy, like they have not had anything. Even the one thing that was really successful that everybody loves, which is Rogue One, that was like they succeeded in spite of themselves. Like, that thing was completely beset by production problems and delays, and they brought in a second director to finish the movie. And the most memorable sequence in the movie, which is Vader killing everybody at the end, was a afterthought that was shot by a different director. Like, all their productions are just a fucking mess. They all are. And you can see it in the product. They tried to cram 3 movies into episode 9 because they had to write a movie and retcon a movie at the same time. I mean, it's just a disaster. And that's on everybody, including Disney. All right, so another potentially devastating impact of this fucking stupid virus is movie theaters are in a ton of trouble. Many of them, most notably AMC this past week, has come out and said that unless there's a miracle influx of cash, they are not going to be able to recover from the extended shutdown and people not going to movies. This is super alarming for not just people that love going to the movies like I do. Seeing a movie in a movie theater is still, I don't care how good your home theater system is, there's still nothing like seeing it with a crowd. If you need any proof, go look at the Avengers Endgame opening night videos that have gone viral this week for people just looking to be reminded of a more fun time.
Yeah, I mean, the video of people reacting to it in the theater gives me chills.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the reaction, in particular, when Cap wields Mjolnir for the first time, and then when the portals all open and all the heroes return, like, that sounds like people are at a concert. Like, it's ridiculous. And
I gotta say, and I gotta say, just for our listeners, like, I personally don't know anybody and have never met anybody who going to the movies is more of a thing than Bill.
Right. It goes back, really the genesis of like the crazy audience reactions, honestly, is probably when episode 1 came out when we were in college. That's the first time I can recall being in a theater at midnight when the Star Wars logo comes on at the beginning of the movie and people just losing their fucking minds. And then Lord of the Rings trilogy after that, and Harry Potter after that, and then the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, people go insane. And movie theaters...
Yeah, midnight showings became a thing.
Right. And we have there's a real possibility. Like, I don't think it's going to get this far. At least I hope not. But there's a real possibility that movie theaters are not a thing, depending on how long this goes. Or
yeah,
if
but
doesn't
maybe it becomes, maybe movie theater companies are not a thing, and it becomes an independently owned thing where, guys like me and you go in and buy old movie theaters or abandoned movie theaters, and we become the movie theater operators.
That's a much more complicated thing than than it sounds like. But either way, even if that is the way that it ends up going, like like these, DC just yanked Wonder Woman from June and pushed it to August, I think. That is extraordinarily optimistic. Like I don't think there's any way. Even if the country reopens in the summer sometime, it's going to be a slow build back up for people to sit in crowds with each other, especially if there's still not a vaccine or widespread testing available. Like sports leagues, movie theaters, concerts, like people are dreaming if they think it's going to recover that fast.
Yeah, Disney moving Mulan to July is like either we're just not even anticipating this making money in North America and hoping Chinese theaters are open at that point, or I don't even know what, because that's just totally
I think that's
unrealistic.
more. I think they're more hopeful for the Asian market on that one, Johnny.
I think you're right.
I don't even think that. Like, I think it's going to be such a slow ramp up. Like, I don't think there's going to be a baseball game until spring training of 2021. I don't think the NBA or NHL are coming back.
What about the NFL?
Yeah, even pro football, like they're in the best situation because they can just wait and watch and see what happens. But like this is like nothing we've ever seen. Like this is going to be a very slow ramp back up unless there's like a miracle vaccine that comes out of absolutely fucking nowhere.
So I mean, AMC is another one where they overextended themselves during the longest bull run in U.S. history. They bought a ton of theaters. They went out, they bought a bunch of international theaters. They lost tons of money in 2019, and they have no cash on hand. This is obviously becoming a theme. Diamond has no cash on hand. Disney has no cash on hand. AMC has no cash on hand. Hopefully a lot of companies will be more like Apple and hoard some cash moving forward. But their credit is now junk. Most analysts are saying they're probably going to go bankrupt. Cinemark is a little more financially secure. They're not up to their eyeballs in debt, and their assets are more valuable. I guess they own more of the theaters, whereas AMC is like leasing a lot of space. AMC is like $5 billion in debt right now, which is not even close to what like AT&T is. But they furloughed their entire headquarters, including their CEO. There's literally no one working at their headquarters right now. That's how disastrous this is.
I read today that literally, unless there's some sort of miracle, which people don't even know what it would be, the only way AMC is going to survive is by declaring Chapter 11. Like that's the choice they have left.
So what about porno movie theaters? Because nobody ever sat close to each other anyway in those.
I think they're in the catbird seat. You can.
I don't know what that saying means.
They're in the most advantageous spot.
So they're okay.
I feel like they're going to be fine.
Okay.
Because if you're going to go to a movie theater and come, you want to be at least 6 feet from the person next to you anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's usually been a rule of thumb for me is to be 6 feet
really.
from the next person when I come. However, I will say you did not always follow that rule in our dorm room in college.
No. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made.
At my expense.
I can't help where you decide to pass out.
So what do you guys think?
I just don't think this is going to be I just don't think this is going to result in a major impact to the world because I just don't see movie theaters going away. I think it's just going to be a change in who owns these movie theaters or the infrastructure behind the movie theaters or something like that. Like I don't see a world where movie theaters don't exist.
Right, but it's the same thing on a much bigger scale than the problem in the comic book industry. Like what you're suggesting is a complete overhaul of the way the system is structured. And that is a much more complicated thing than I think a lot of people think it is.
I was going to say, I think you might. So there was a law passed back in the 50s that made it illegal for the studios to own movie theater chains because they considered it a monopoly. And I think you might see that law rescinded, and you might see the studios jump in and actually buy the distressed asset of AMC because they have obviously a vested interest in having these movie theaters be open. So I wouldn't be surprised if because I don't think they're going to get a government bailout. You're not going to have something like with the airlines where the Fed's going to give them a bunch of money. So I think what's going to end up I wouldn't be surprised, but I do agree on your comic book analogy, in that one of the things they've done really is less people are going to the movie theater, but it costs more to go. So therefore it doesn't look like they're having any problems, right? Just like comic books cost way too much money, so less people are buying them, but they're still making the same amount of money because they cost $4 a pop now instead of $1.75. So I think you're going to see even less mid-budget movies in the theaters. They're going to keep going to Netflix even more than they are now. You're basically going to see like your Blumhouse fare that costs $7 million, or you're going to see Avengers Endgame. I think there's going to be no middle anymore. It's going to be stuff they know is going to make money one way or the other because they either spent a fortune on it and it's a valuable IP, or it's cheap horror, cheap rom-com type stuff that they know, or Frozen, Pixar, that kind of thing. I think the middle is going to completely disappear and go straight to video on demand and streaming and stuff like that.
Borderline disappeared already.
Yeah.
I mean we're mostly there now.
The mid-budget dialogue-driven thriller is dead. That's on Netflix now.
Yeah, I mean it's gone. That Netflix goes and buys them for like cans and stuff like that. You're right.
What about the softcore porn market?
I don't understand the question.
What do you think? Pornhub's going to go out of business, or Pornhub's going to take more?
No, like softcore porn, like these movies that are just there's like the plot is questionable, but there's just a lot of intercourse. Like, what was the movie with Jake Gyllenhaal and what's her name?
I don't know.
I don't know what
Jake Gyllenhaal was in a softcore. It was in a softcore porn. How?
Yeah, wasn't he? Who? I can't believe I can't remember her name. Who played Catwoman?
Oh, Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, what was the name
of
that?
It was like more of a rom-com, right? With like the Viagra thing, where he was like the Viagra salesman.
Yeah, that wasn't. I mean, there was a lot of sex in it, but I wouldn't call that softcore porn.
It was softcore porn.
I mean, there's always. I feel like Cinemax is fine. Like they're still going to be. They're still going to be,
especially nowadays. I mean, geez.
Yeah, Showtime After Dark is good to go.
Yeah, Night Eyes 26 I think comes out this weekend.
Hollywood Bordello.
Yeah, they're gonna. Skinemax is going to be fine. I mean, people always need their softcore.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail the conversation.
Well, yeah, I mean,
no, it's always good to talk about softcore. I mean, that's no dick. So
exactly. I mean, that's the best part about it is you get boobies, you get sex, but you don't have to worry about the penis.
That's right.
John's never liked hardcore porn. Do you know that, Frank?
I did know that. Yes.
He doesn't like seeing the dick.
That's part of the reason I brought it up.
Money shot grosses me out, man.
Hi, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylie. We're the hosts of Half-Wit History, and we have a new podcast.
We're calling it Half-Wits and Failed Crits, an actual play podcast. Our first season is going to be called Worlds Divided, where we play Dungeons & Dragons featuring a few of our friends. Luis.
I play Nixtern, a half-orc chaotic evil mercenary fighter. I was raised by bears and collect heads.
Mary.
I play Adriel, a snarky tiefling assassin. Tough on the outside, but under layers of poison and daggers, secretly loves the company of her guild.
Laura.
I play Anya, a wood elf ranger exiled from her tribe and denounced by her goddess. She drinks to forget, and her trusted companion, Pants, the blink dog, keeps her on the right path.
And Kylie.
I play Malara, a high elf druid. I'm responsible for keeping these hooligans in line, and am seeking to find out the secret of my mother's mysterious locket.
And lastly, I'm Jonathan, your DM for the adventure. Our first 3 episodes are going to be a recap of our first 9 events up until we started recording this. Then we'll start posting games 10 through 20 as they get edited. Join us as our characters try to make a name for themselves in a kingdom of guilds that most definitely has it out for our newbies.
The dice definitely have it out for us, too. Check us out at halfwitsfailedcrits.com or your favorite podcatcher.
All right, everybody. So Johnny, Bill, what a polarizing show this has been. I mean, we've been arguing back and forth, both sides. Bill stopped talking to me at one point throughout the show. Unbelievable.
I feel like I'm the winner, but it's fine.
And I'm just going to let you have that victory. And I'm going to say, guys, it's time to go back to the island.
We have to go back.
Because now it's time for our Lost rewatch. Episode. Oh, are we doing the noise?
Oh.
All right, so Bill, episode 6, House of the Rising Sun.
That's right. This is season 1, episode 6, House of the Rising Sun. Air date was October 27th, 2004. The flashback was Sun. I mean, technically Jin and Sun, but according to Lostpedia, this is a Sun episode.
Sexist.
It only comprised one day on the island, day 7. The writer was, Javier Grillo Marxock, and the director was Michael Zinberg, neither of which I've heard of before.
Yeah, I interesting pairing for an episode so early in the life of this show.
So, who wants to start? Who wants to start with the plot of this one?
I'll start. So this one starts out with we get another eyeball shot.
Yep, they love the eyeballs.
They do love the eyeballs, and except this time it's Sun's eyeball, which tells us that this is going to be a Sun-centric episode. Kind of a meaningless beginning, but then we get all of a sudden Jin comes running at Michael and just starts beating the shit out of him. Like literally beating the shit out of him. And it's clear that in like his motive is to kill him. Like he's holding him under the water. He's going to kill him.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if I'd breeze over the intro because I thought there was I kind of like that they had the flirtation between Jack and Kate, which is then sort of reflected in the story that gets told in the flashbacks about the sort of cuteness of Sun and Jin when they first go to the flashback, and then how that story develops and takes a much darker turn. But
see, you're so much smarter than me. Like I didn't make that parallel, but until right now, but it makes so much sense. I love you, Johnny.
Oh, I'm happy to be here and help.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So this episode has a lot of different plots in it. There's really like an A, B, C, and D plot. And the A plot is Sun and Jin centric. As Bill said, it's a Sun flashback, but it's really more of a Sun and Jin flashback, which most of the flashbacks for these characters are going to be shared. And we flash back to their time before the island, where Sun is a kind of a rich Korean woman and Jin is a lowly waiter, but they are in love in this sort of cross-class love affair.
So this is basically the prequel to Crazy Rich Asians.
Sort of.
That's exactly right. Except gender flipped, but yes, that's exactly right. So
sign of the times.
Exactly. So Sun wants to run off to America and elope, but Jin insists on being more traditional and asking her father for permission for her hand. And he wins her hand, but he also has to take a job with her father, and
which she's not happy about from the get.
Yeah, she's not happy about it. She wants to be a little more free, and she kind of, I think, likes the more like low key romance of him giving her a flower versus his big grand gestures. He buys her a dog, which also conveniently tells us how much time has passed because we get the dog as a puppy and then the dog as an older dog.
But we also find out later that he doesn't buy her a dog. But
that's true. And he goes to work for her father, and they start becoming a lot more distant from each other. And then, she, one time he comes home and he's got blood all over himself, and he tells her that he does whatever her father tells him to do. And we discover that Sun was ready to leave Jin and run off right before their trip on Oceanic 815. But he does a romantic little gesture for her. He has the flower, the same flower from when they first met, or sort of with the first flashback scene. And she kind of decides not to run away. And then, of course, the plane goes down. Yeah, so that kind of covers the flashback.
Like, holy shit, talk about your all-time backfires.
Yeah. True enough.
Really should have left.
Yeah, she has no sense of, like, foreshadowing at all.
Well, you know what? Like this flashback was, I mean, it's good character information. Like, we find out that Jin came from nothing and Sun was the rich one. I'm not sure that people would have guessed that, but for the most part, this flashback sort of, you can kind of see where this is going to go from very early on. Not a lot of surprises. Like, this is the first flashback where it was good. I want to know more about the characters, but not a whole lot of surprising stuff happening. And like, maybe it was a little surprising that she was going to, leave under the, in the middle, Sun was going to leave him in the middle of the night and had a whole plan worked out. But for the most part, not anything super revelatory in this flashback.
Well, she wasn't going to leave in the middle of the night. She was going to jump in that car at the airport.
Right. Yeah. Right. No, she was going to, what I mean is, like, she was going to still. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I was expecting Sun's father to be whatever the Korean version of the Yakuza was.
Yeah, but I don't think we know that yet, Johnny. Like, I think we find that out.
Well, we know it's violent, right? I mean, he comes home with blood.
It's not everything's above board, but I mean, I think the broad strokes is like, even watching this the second time, I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, we're going to see how this marriage goes downhill. Like, I don't think it was, surprising.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little more about what we thought about the episode. The B plot was the cave that Jack discovered in the previous episode that you guys reviewed without me. It has fresh water. So
did Johnny just take a shot at us, Bill?
It was a broadside swipe.
Oh, geez. I put a little more sting on that than I realized. So he leads a party back to the caves, and Jack decides that they're better off leaving the beach and making their camp in the caves because they have this fresh water source, and it doesn't seem like anybody's going to be coming to rescue them anytime soon. But it kind of throws a monkey wrench in the relationship between he and Kate, because Kate disagrees and she wants to stay on the beach. She kind of just doesn't want to be told what to do, I think, is really more her thinking.
Do you think that's what it is? So this whole episode, I was trying to, like, every time, like, she was making a lot of weird, like, faces in this episode, and I was trying to understand what the fuck her issue was, and I couldn't figure it out. Like, at first I was like, well, is it because of what they heard on the walkie-talkie that nobody knows about, or is it what's going on? Like, I wanted to ask you guys that because I'm not as smart as you guys. You guys are both.
Well, I think John has a point, especially that scene where Kate thinks at first that Jack's checking her out or whatever, and he's actually thinking about construction at the caves and blah blah blah. And Kate says that he says we have to convince everybody to move, and she says you have to convince me. I think she's miffed that, like, Jack
just
sort of
assumed that she was.
Yeah, he's just assumed that she was going to go along with whatever he said.
So great question. Johnny, what would you have been thinking about at that moment?
I would have definitely been thinking about Kate's ass. That little area that you could see that would have a tramp stamp on a less attractive woman. But it was very, very, very hot in this instance.
Maz, what would you have been thinking about in that instance?
I would have been thinking, when is she going to go away so I can masturbate?
Interesting.
Yeah, and then back to the A plot. The one revelatory thing that does happen in this episode is Sun can speak English, which comes out.
Yeah,
I
apologize. I kind of dove between one and the other. So that's really more the B plot, I guess, is actually the island plot with Sun and Jin, where obviously everyone's upset with Jin. Meanwhile, Jack, Mr. Leadership, as we saw from the last episode, is away. So they handcuff him to this piece of the wreckage, and Michael is unconscionably racist because he's kind of a git from the outset, honestly.
Yeah, he really is.
But then Sun reveals that she can speak English in order to enlist Michael's help in kind of forgiving Jin and releasing him.
But Johnny, before you go on, so what I thought was kind of interesting was how when it came to the crime and punishment policing situation, Jack was so easily willing to defer to Saeed. Because Saeed's like, yeah, I'm going to give him another day in the sun and then approach him again. And Jack was like, all right, so you got that covered. Like, it was just like, all right, you're going to handle that. I don't have to think about it. Like, he didn't have an opinion. He didn't really give a shit. It was more like Jack's thinking about the the survival, how are we going to survive? Yeah. Okay. This skirmish issue, you deal with that, Saeed. It's just I don't have to deal with it. I thought that was pretty interesting. Saeed kind of obviously takes the role of the law in this episode.
I mean, I think we talked about that a little bit in when we were talking about episode 2, that Saeed has some leadership qualities as well. They're just not the same leadership qualities that Jack has. His military experience, it leads him to be more of a leader in these kind of law enforcement situations, or when it comes to, things like the transceiver and stuff like that, stuff that Jack's knowledge base doesn't touch on as much. And I think it's also convenient plot-wise to get Saeed involved in the plot too. That Jack can't be doing everything all the time in an ensemble show, just for as far as the strings moving in the background. So I mean, I like Saeed, so I think it's good to get him involved, and you always get a little bit of more kind of insight into his background, being from Iraq, and obviously, especially at the time when this came out, it was a much bigger deal to have a character from Iraq, be a major part of the ensemble like this. So I thought that was, I enjoy Saeed as a character. And I'm glad they gave him a little bit of a moment because he kind of was sidelined the last couple episodes, I thought.
They definitely steer away from him at the end of the show.
And so basically Michael kind of forgives Jin, but tells him to piss off. And he also promises that he won't reveal Sun's ability to speak English. So he's going to keep that close to the vest. And it kind of gives him a nice moment with Walt at the end, where they realize they don't know much about each other, but they want to kind of learn about each other. And then in our D plot, we have Locke and Charlie. And Charlie accidentally steps on a beehive and has to stay back in the caves with Locke while Jack and Kate go back to the beach.
In my opinion, the Locke and Charlie plot of this episode is the best part of this episode.
I don't totally disagree with you, mostly because I just love Locke, and especially this early going. And I mean, I like this. I like the Sun and Jin flashbacks a lot too. We'll get to it in a second, but this is a very muddled episode, I thought.
Yeah, that's a great word for it, Johnny. Muddled.
So just to get through the plot, so Locke kind of susses out that Charlie's an addict, and he basically trades Charlie's heroin stash that he found in the pilot for Charlie's guitar because he knows where it is.
So good.
He pretends it's mystical, but I think he just kind of saw it and then played Charlie like a fiddle. And Charlie willingly gives up his heroin in order to get his guitar back, and then Locke.
But he plays
somehow.
but he plays that card where he says, he says, "'Cause I have faith." So they're like. This is what, the 6th episode, 5th episode, and they're pounding on, Locke being a man of faith. So it's like, well, how do you know I'm going to get my guitar back? Because I have faith. It's just
No,
and he says, this island. I think he flat out says it. It's like, this island will give you what you want if you make a sacrifice.
Yeah, I think half of that is faith, and half of that is him just yanking Charlie around.
Yeah, but it's such a good scene, and
yeah, it is. I didn't love it. I didn't love the Locke Charlie stuff as much as you guys did.
Yeah, but let me ask you a question. Like, do you think Locke knew where his guitar was the first time in the episode where he asked him how long it had been since he played? When he says 8 days and 11 hours, and he says, "Well, how much do you want it back?" And he says, "More than you know," or whatever. Like, do you think Locke knew his? You think Locke knew where his guitar was at that point?
I do, yeah.
But I think he could even...
He saw it up in the tree or whatever and put it together.
Okay.
You can make the argument that even now, Locke is trying to convert people to his beliefs about this island, right? He had the conversation with Jack in the last episode. And you could see maybe what's going on with Charlie being a foreshadowing of what ends up happening between him and Boone later in the season. If you want to read it that way, or it could just be, we've got these two actors and need to do something in this episode. I think you could read it either way.
No, I think Frank's point is well taken. Like, I think he knows where the guitar is, but I also think he uses that as an opportunity to push his faith agenda.
So what I found really interesting about this episode was, so this is like the first real division you see in the series, right? So this is where, and I completely forgot about this aspect of the show. They call it the cave dwellers and the beach people or whatever. And so it's like, there becomes this campaign for, well, who's going to go to the cave and who's going to stay on the beach. So that's that. And the fact that John becomes one of the cave dwellers with Jack, but then later in the series we find that the real division, like, that drives the show becomes not between, do we accept the fact that we're on this island and dig in, or do we stay on the beach to hope somebody finds us, but it becomes between black and white, good and evil, Locke and Charlie, faith and science, that Locke goes with Jack to the caves.
I mean, do you think that's more because Locke just wants more opportunities to be out and about on this island, and being stuck on the beach is not really where he wants to be? I think Locke is conniving, frankly, from episode 4 onward, as far as his, that he's looking for any opportunity he can get to kind of be more a part of this island. And I think that Jack wanting to move inland is positive to him, and he'll take what opportunities he can get.
Well, yeah, I think it's like you said. I mean, off of this island, Locke is a paralyzed loser. On this island, Locke is the great white hunter, as they call him in this episode. And the idea of digging in and going off the beach and limiting the chance of rescue is more alluring to Locke than staying on the beach looking for rescue.
I think it's both. I think, I think all of those things play into it. But I also think, Frank and I talked about it last week, Locke doesn't want to be the overlord leader of the group. He knows that's Jack's role. His role is something different, which I think he's still figuring out.
That's fair. So overall, I said I thought this episode was muddled. It seemed like, Frank, you kind of agreed. I don't know, Bill, if you agreed as well. I thought this is probably the worst episode we watched so far, which is not like we're we're ragging on it. Like, frankly, this is not a Lost roast show in the slightest at this point.
Well, I think
But
also, I would give every episode we've watched up to this point like either an A or an A plus. So like this is the first one. This is definitely the worst so far. I would agree that it's muddled. I think they didn't have a strong enough island A plot, and like there wasn't enough with Sun and Jin on the island, so they had to add a bunch of other things in there. They also, this is the episode they chose where they're going to split the group. So I think there was almost no way for it not to be muddled. There was just a lot going on.
Yeah, there's too many plots going on in this episode, and up to this point, usually the flashbacks are driving what's going on in the main. The flashbacks are driving the understanding of what's happening on the island. And in this episode, it's like the flashbacks are Jin, and they're like on the island. They're like the C plot. The A plot on the island is the division of these two groups, the cave dwellers and the beach people. And the B plot is like Locke and Charlie. And the C plot on the island is like the whole thing going on with Sun. I don't know. That's the way I saw it.
I don't really agree with that. I think the Sun, Jin, Michael thing is at least the B on the island. If not, I still think the best part of the episode is the revelation that Sun can speak English, because up until that point, I wasn't really interested in Sun or Jin at all as a character. Now the fact that she's been hiding this secret and has been good at hiding this secret for 5 episodes, to me, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, like this character has more layers than I gave her credit for. That whole plot. I mean, I don't love Michael as a character. Jin and Sun I will come to like more than I liked them in this first season. But to me, that was the most interesting development in the episode. It was either that or the Jack and Kate division. Like the first time we're seeing those two really disagree, and we get to see exactly how stubborn both of them are. But I still think, in an episode where not that much really, there was a lot going on, but very little actually happening until Jack leads the cave people away.
See, my favorite part of this episode was the scene with Locke and Charlie.
You guys like that more than me.
I just felt like, one thing I'm on record as saying, I think generally Sun and Jin flashbacks are bangers. But this really wasn't one. From the perspective of someone like who's older watching this again, I really felt like you could just see the writerly strings on this episode. There were a lot of procedural elements that had to happen. Production wise, it was probably a lot more expensive to be on the beach than it was to be in the caves. They needed to kind of do a lot of table setting, and they kind of forced it into an episode. And I think, but the character work I thought for Sun and Jin was pretty strong.
I agree.
I also think it's unusual, and we'll see with a lot of the other flashbacks, right now, if you're watching this along with us, and you're probably really spoiled at this point. But I just felt like they rushed through a lot of the Sun and Jin plot, and then a lot of their flashbacks subsequently are going to be filling in a lot of the gaps in that plot, which is fairly unusual. You usually get more like the Kate Tabula Rasa, where you get like kind of a snapshot of one sort of moment in their life. But in this case, we got their entire history, and then they go in and they fill in the gaps in the later flashbacks, which is not the way they typically do these flashbacks.
Right, but I think they had to get across right away that like these two started off as sort of this star-crossed lovers, and they wanted to show you how it got to the point where they're at on the island.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't read the Lostpedia, but I did read the Wikipedia for this episode, and apparently both actors kind of came to the writers and said, we don't want people to like think negatively about Korean culture, so we're kind of hoping you'll do something more interesting with our character backgrounds. Yeah. And that's what led to a lot of this, the way they fleshed out the characters and their plot. I'm very invested in their relationship, not so much now, but as someone who's seen the entire series, and probably besides Desmond and Penny, it's the relationship I'm most invested in. So it gets better for them after this episode. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. All right. So let's do some trivia here from Lostpedia. The coolest part to me is the identity of the individuals that they find in the cave. Adam and Eve, they call them. are revealed near the very end of the series in Across the Sea, which is toward the end of the whole series. They eventually use archive. What?
And if Locke had called them Eve and Abel, Eve and Cain, he actually would have been almost exactly right. So
yeah, right. So I think it's really cool though that they find these Adam and Eve in this episode, and then the payoff, you find out who they actually are like an episode or two before the whole series ends, which is pretty cool.
Remind me who they were.
Adam and Eve were the two bodies they find in the cave.
Yeah, but who were they at the end? Was one Jacob's mother?
It's the Man in Black, his original body, and Jacob and the Man in Black's adoptive mother.
So it's the mother and the Man in Black.
It's C.J. Craig and Harry Bosch. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. That's still like the ballsiest episode ever when we get to that. But this episode also has the lowest number of guest stars, which was 0, and the lowest number of co-stars, 1 for any episode of the entire run of the series, which is interesting. This is the first episode where in flashback, the centric character, in this case, Sun, interacts with another main character, Jin, who is not the centric character. Emil Deravin, who plays Claire, does not appear in this episode and is not credited for the first of several times in season 1.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Ian Somerhalder, which is Boone, and Maggie Grace, which is Shannon, both appear but don't have any lines. This is the sole time that Boone does not have any lines while he's alive.
Spoiler.
The first episode did not feature every regular. And that's really it. There's a couple goofy bloopers. During the fight scene, you can clearly see that it's not Daniel Day Kim in the fight scene, which is always fun for me to go back and watch, see if I can pick it out.
Can you pick it out?
Yeah, kind of. It was much more obvious last week when the stuntman from Matthew Fox was hanging from the cliff, and it's clearly not him. Like, it looks like they didn't even try to make it look like him.
Well, that's because it was a black guy.
Yeah, right. That's pretty much it. Not a lot going on with Easter eggs here. This is a very sort of, like John said, it's a very sort of procedural, straightforward episode. I think it suffered from the fact that there was too much going on, but also like that's going to happen in these shows. There are going to be episodes where they need things to happen, and it's going to come across as a little muddled. I'm glad they end up fleshing out Jin and Sun like John just talked about, because I do sort of think they get the shaft a little bit in this episode. It's still good. The flashback is still good, but especially on the island, they don't get as much time as they should. And I'm glad that they fill in the gaps later on.
So can I let me pose a question to you two. So this is easily my least favorite episode we've watched so far.
Me too. I'd give it a B.
So is that the reason why we've never heard of this writer or director before or since?
It may very well be.
It might be, but I don't know. I think probably I don't know. For all we know, as we go through this guy could write another 50 episodes of this show. I don't know. Again, I don't know that the writing, especially in the flashback, I don't think the writing was bad. I just think there was a lot going on. And sometimes, you're going to be the guy writing or the guy directing an episode where a bunch of things have to happen, and it's going to make it a little more muddled. Like, the Locke episode and the Jack episode that preceded this were very, very sort of laser focused on those two characters. And this one, they had a lot more to do with like the group dynamics. So it kind of just makes it out that way. But I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I'll keep an eye out for this guy's name. Maybe he will, I'm going to Google it real quick. So this guy was the sole writer on another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 more episodes. So we'll see.
I mean, I think there's maybe, Frank, something to this show came out of the gates so strong that, there's certain growing pains that every show has to go through when it, as they develop a writer's room. As you've noted previously, like, we haven't seen Carlton Cuse's name on anything. Meanwhile, J.J. Abrams was very heavily involved, from what I understand, in the first half of the first season, and then he kind of stepped back to more just like an executive producer role. So there's definitely probably things going on in the background. I think they also had just gotten picked up for a full season, like right after the last episode. So they only knew they had the first 13 episodes up until like probably when they were breaking and filming this episode. So there's probably a lot of things in the background too that might lead to this episode being a little more muddled.
Yeah. Also, I did some research on this, Frank, because we talked about it last week. So right at about actually a little bit before halfway, when J.J. Abrams starts to scale back his responsibilities because he's doing other things, Lindelof was uneasy about running the writer's room by himself and thought about quitting. And Carlton Cuse, who was friends with him before this, convinced him not to quit. And then Cuse gets brought on episode 10.
Really?
Yeah.
I love that
So
shit.
Cuse came on to help Lindelof out and ended up staying for the run of the show.
Well, what did they know each other from before?
They were probably, I would imagine, struggling writers and stuff. And, I think the whole community eventually gets to know each other.
Lindelof didn't write episodes of Nash Bridges. I'm shocked.
Is that where Cuse came from?
He was like the showrunner on
that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Was he the showrunner when Stone Cold was on it?
Probably.
I don't know enough about the ins and outs of the season basis of Nash Bridges.
I will say one thing that lends credence to what you're saying, Frank, is this director, Michael Zinberg. This is the only episode of Lost that he directed.
Right. And it's got a weaker feel to it than the 4 or whatever, however many we've seen leading up to this.
Yeah, and that's like, part of that is probably maybe he's not the best director, and another part of that is like he has a lot of masters to serve in this episode, so it automatically means you can be a little less dynamic.
Yeah. I just like thinking of like Lindelof like sitting in his hotel room all depressed and Cuse being like,
Don't quit.
Dude, what are you doing, man? Come on. Like, this show's dope. And he's like, I can't do it. And he's like, come on, man, you can do it. He's like, no, I can't do it.
Yeah, so
let me tell you about this time I was on Nash Bridges.
He's like, yeah, one time on Nash Bridges, Don Johnson was like, I'm not doing this shit. And I was like, come on, Don. And he was like, okay.
I bet that exact conversation happened. Yeah, I'm reading here that Lindelof and Abrams planned out the first 12 episodes together, and that's it.
Are you kidding me?
After that,
Lindelof and Abrams, the first 12.
Yep, and then everything else from that point forward was Lindelof and Cuse. Like,
so cool. But Abrams was the runner for the whole first season.
Yeah, in terms of overall mythology and storylines and stuff like that, everything after the first 12 was Lindelof and Cuse. And honestly, like, they didn't really start to plan ahead until season 3. They're flying by the seat of their pants for the back half of season 1 and season 2.
Yeah, they're fighting for survival.
Well, not only that, but it's like, I don't even think it occurred to them at that point, or maybe it did, but they were really just posing a lot of interesting questions and didn't really have the answers to them. And they just figured like, oh, we'll figure it out. And then they got to like the tip, as we'll see, they get to a tipping point where it's like, okay, we need a plan.
What has Cuse done since?
I don't. John, do you know?
Didn't he have some show on Sci-Fi?
So nothing like that jumps to mind.
Certainly, Lindelof has somehow come off as the mastermind behind the show, maybe with good reason.
I certainly think he was the driving force for sure.
Who did?
Seems like Cuse.
Who did Fringe?
Abrams and the two guys that wrote the Transformers movie, right?
Yeah.
Orky and who?
Yeah,
Kurtzman.
Yeah, Alec Kurtzman and Roberto Orci.
Weren't they involved in Lost somehow?
I think they wrote a couple episodes.
All right, so here we go. Carlton Cuse is the showrunner for Jack Ryan right now.
Is he really?
Yeah, and he's also the showrunner for Lock and Key.
So, okay, so here's the deal. So, has anybody heard anything about Lock and Key on Netflix?
Yeah, I heard it's amazing, and it's one of my favorite comic series of all time.
Well, I know that.
That might be my. That might be my next. That might be my next binge show.
Yeah, so like I know you love the comics, and I know it's Joe Hill, so I'm like, is it worth watching on Netflix? I haven't heard anything about it. Like,
after I finish Picard, that's gonna be my next thing.
okay,
So Carlton Cuse has done a lot actually. So after Lost, he took some time off. He was a showrunner for 50 episodes of the Bates Motel, which was good. He was the showrunner for The Strain on FX.
oh, he did. He was on The Strain.
Yep, and he was the showrunner for 3 seasons on Colony, which
That was a show I was trying to think of. That was not sci-fi.
Yeah, Colony
That
was.
wasn't sci-fi,
That was
yeah.
what's his name? Holloway.
That's what I just said 3 times.
Mm.
That was the one I was trying to. That I thought was on sci-fi. It was on USA though. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And now he's doing Jack Ryan and Lock and Key.
So did he do season 1 and 2 of Ryan?
Yeah, he's done. Yeah, he's been the showrunner for all episodes.
Okay, so Cuse has been like consistently good then since.
He's been. I mean, I think The Strain was kind of shitty, but I mean, the first season was okay, and everything else.
The Strain was
was
a little too much for TV.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was on FX. They usually get away with a lot. I thought the books were way better than the adaptation.
Yeah, well, Del Toro.
Yeah, and Bates Motel is something that I didn't watch all of, but I heard was. I mean, the reviews of that are kind.
Well, that's what's her name, right?
Vera Farmiga and the kid that plays the good doctor.
That's right.
Oh, I thought it was the lady that used to date Ellen.
No, Portia de Rossi.
No, Anne
No.
Heche. It's not Anne Heche. It's Vera Farmiga.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
Departed.
Oh.
You're thinking of Anne Heche played the Janet Leigh role in the Psycho remake.
Ah, that's right. That's right. You're right. You're right. God, this has been a burner. We're almost at 2 hours, guys.
Yeah, man, a lot of IP out there now.
I think we just really miss interacting with other human beings.
There's definitely part of that at play here for sure.
So we're gonna end this episode. I'm gonna rub one out and then go back to Final Fantasy VII.
That's a nice little Saturday.
What do you got going on tonight, Bill?
I think I'm gonna try to finish Picard tonight. See if I can get through. I only have 2 left, so I should be able to.
Johnny, you?
I'm watching a show called 68 Whiskey. It's like this military comedy thing that was on the Paramount Network or something. I like military shows, but it's not that good. I wouldn't recommend it.
Has anybody watched SEAL Team?
Yeah, I watched the first couple episodes because I try to support good old Angel, but yeah, not very good.
Not good.
Not good. Military shows are hard to pull off.
Yeah. It's been a while since there's been a good one. So, well, guys, this has been a long one, and but a good one, and I enjoyed the conversation. I'm going to continue my weekend, and I hope you guys stay inside, wash your fucking hands, and stay socially distanced. And we'll get back together again in a couple of days. Keep the prolific the prolificness of Bill and Frank going. This has been unbelievable. Johnny is working his ass off. We may have to throw his name into the title, Bill. I don't know.
Yeah,
like
I think that point is rapidly approaching.
Yeah.
We'll duct tape it on at the bottom, and Johnny.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it'll be like in spray paint underneath everything else. And like with his face plastered over us, like somebody like paper mached it over everything else. But no, I got to be honest. These are becoming the highlights of my week, and it's helping me
cope.
Yeah, it's helping me cope, and I hope it's helping you two cope.
Certainly,
I feel exactly the same.
It certainly is. Certainly for me. I mean, it's when the only people I talk to are my daughter and my dog. So I mean, to talk to other adults is, even though you're both pretty childish, it's what I have.
Well, don't talk to your dog too much, because that's how Son of Sam happened. But this whole thing, as it just goes by week, it just sucks more and more. But I hope people are listening and they're enjoying it, and we're making them laugh, and it's giving them an escape, and hoping to make them feel like their confinement expands a couple of feet while they're listening. And I hope you guys have a good weekend, and we'll get back to this soon. I don't want to go too many more days without talking to you guys again. So hope you guys take care of yourselves.
Yeah, here.
Sounds good to me.
All right, everybody. At BF Pop Culture on Twitter. Drop by, say hi, follow us, leave a comment, retweet everything I say because it's super funny. And be well, everybody.
Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Open up your hate and let everyone to make. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You mother, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You fucker, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. And this is the